Cristiano Ronaldo's homecoming to Manchester United, the commercial impact, the football impact. Why did Manchester United sign Cristiano Ronaldo? And helping me with that is Phil Buckingham, who is our news reporter, who's written an excellent piece on Ronaldo. And that's what we're going to talk about this week. Lead us off. What do you think? What's the main reason why United signed Ronaldo?
Well, the first thing to make clear is there aren't many footballers like Cristiano Ronaldo. You can talk about players like Erling Haaland and even Neymar and Mbappe, but none other than Lionel Messi come close to Cristiano Ronaldo on his global appeal. His reputation he's been at the top of the game for 15 years now, probably more. And if you were to parachute yourself into deepest Japan or Kenya and show someone a picture of, I don't know, some big transfers from the summer, like a Jack Grealish or a Romelu Lukaku, there's a good chance those people aren't going to know who they are. Show them a picture of Cristiano Ronaldo and there's a good chance they will know who it is. And anyone that signs Cristiano Ronaldo taps into that. As we discussed in the piece, Juventus, relatively speaking, were quite a small club commercially. We signed Cristiano Ronaldo, everything goes up: shirt sales, commercial revenue, social media following, and that's what you get when you sign Ronaldo. He's a phenomenon, really.
Manchester United clearly are going to be looking to try and tap into that as well. They're obviously a different beast to Juventus. They're a corporate monster themselves, as you write in the piece. So do you think they actually can get the same kind of uplift that Juventus have got? I mean, you had some really interesting figures in your piece about the fact that United, I think, have got 190 million followers on various different social media platforms. Ronaldo's got 600 million. So you can see the disparity there. But United are already kind of maxing out their commercial revenue. But do you think he really can provide an extra uplift?
Yeah, that's the thing to stress. That the two clubs have got very different starting points. If you looked at Juventus when Ronaldo went there, they were trailing in terms of commercial revenue and overall revenue. If you look at Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid as the sort of big three in that market, Juventus were trailing those by circa 300 million a year. Ronaldo helped them close that gap, and that was a big reason why Juventus went after him. They knew what they were going to get when they signed him. They obviously knew they were going to get this world-class footballer, but part of their pursuit of Ronaldo was getting this player that can turn the dial, and there aren't too many players that can do that. I think we'll talk all day about this, but ultimately there's two players in the world that can have that impact, and it's Ronaldo and Messi. And that's the thing with Juventus. They saw a huge uplift in percentages. I'm sure United will get a big uplift. I'm sure they'll sell more shirts. I'm sure they'll get more attractive sponsorship deals. Percentage-wise, it won't go up at the same time as Juventus, but ultimately that's because of what Manchester United have become over the last 2 decades. The markets they've tapped into. Global brands. I think it's 24 alone in terms of global brands. You've got an official wine supplier, they've got an official engine oil supplier, and that's without even taking into the regional ones. I think they're often derided about noodle partners and things like that, aren't they? But the kings of the game, and that's how they maximise their commercial revenue. There aren't too many clubs that can do that.
That is interesting. You mentioned about the sponsorships in terms of what United can actually get out of Ronaldo, because we saw at the start of the pandemic, after the Super League collapsed, that there was a £200 million deal with the Hook Group that was ready to go, and they actually distanced themselves from United and pulled the plug on that one. So that's a huge hit. Ronaldo now coming on board, clearly those talks are going to start again. The training ground is the sponsorship there is ripe really for commercial entities to get into. So we'll see if that sort of moves along smoother. And the shirt sales, as you say, I know that clubs don't necessarily get the most benefit. It's the sponsors, it's the manufacturers that do. But yeah, there was a queue of 200 people outside the megastore at Old Trafford before 10 a.m. waiting to get CR7 on the back. It's interesting that he's managed to get that number 7 off Edinson Cavani, who has moved to 21.
I think football clubs are generally quite secretive about how many shirts they sell, but it was within the industry, it was suggested when Liverpool won the league that they overtook Manchester United in terms of global shirt sales. I'd wager that will be reversed with Ronaldo on board, just because any youngster wants a Cristiano Ronaldo 7 Man United shirt now, don't they? And and as you say, I think that is forever worth stressing, that these clubs enter into agreements with their kit manufacturers, and they get a lump sum up front. So they're anywhere between £5 and £10 they will make on every shirt. So they'll have to sell an awful lot of shirts, and an unrealistic amount if they ever want to cover their outlay on shirt sales alone. But yeah, the whole package together, they're going to make a lot of money on Ronaldo.
I mean, this might sound like anathema to a lot of football fans who feel like the game is too much going in that direction, sponsorships and kind of commercial entities and what have you. But ultimately, it is the business that we're in at the moment, you know, with football. I think it's always going to be that way with big business. And it's interesting what you say, Phil, about you know, sort of Liverpool feeling like they'd overtake United in the shirt sponsorship sales. When you look at the social media uplift, there's sort of a bit of a rivalry between PSG and Manchester United over who had the most sort of mentions on Twitter, for example, over Lionel Messi signing for PSG and Cristiano Ronaldo. And it might sound trivial to a lot of people, but I suppose ultimately that translates into money, and that means that these clubs can sustain and buy more players.
Yeah, and the social media following, I think people might scoff at that, but for every set of eyes you have on your football club through a social media account is another set of eyes that you can take to a sponsor and say, this is how many people will be seeing your brand. And you know, and if you're adding several million, as they have done through Ronaldo's arrival, they can then turn around to any prospective sponsors and say, this is now what you're getting, and it does make a difference.
So as that brings us nicely on to the kind of theme of this, why did Manchester United sign Cristiano Ronaldo, commercial or footballing reasons? Because there was sort of two strands to the move as it was developing on Friday, when you had, you know, the old boys network at Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson, Rio Ferdinand, Patrice Evra. It's kind of like who didn't get involved. And then also on the flip side of that, you had Ed Woodward, who I think instantly, when he was called by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, when it appeared that Manchester City were going to do the deal, recognised that, for one, on a football side of things, this would put Manchester United in jeopardy, and two, the image of Ronaldo going over to Manchester City, the prospect of having a hit to the kind of legacy sales that they could expect from Cristiano Ronaldo on the shirts, on the kind of videos, whatever, and then being able to actually bring him back to Old Trafford would generate such an uplift in terms of eyeballs and excitement. He then has to make that case to Joel Glazer, who has, you know, a close eye on the purse strings, certainly been involved in setting the price parameters for Jadon Sancho, for example, the previous summer. So Edward would explain to him and did some kind of calculations on the amount that we're talking about here, how many people would actually now go and look on the Manchester United website, what sponsorship could that then entail? So there was a sort of two-pronged approach to it. Yeah. I guess, what do you think? You know, was it a football or was it a commercial decision ultimately?
I'm leaning more towards football with United. When you look back at his move to Juventus, it certainly was, because as I outlined earlier, Juventus had so much to gain by signing Cristiano Ronaldo. That was their game changer. Not necessarily on the pitch. I don't think he delivered what they wanted. You know, the Champions League performances didn't get further than the quarterfinals. That's what they were hoping for when they signed Ronaldo. And even last season in Serie A, they've fallen to fourth in the league. That's pretty much unheard of in the last decade for Juve. So they didn't get that return that they wanted on the pitch. But I think with United, it's a very different investment. There wasn't the same outlay in terms of a transfer fee. That's pretty much nominal, really, in modern day football. Certainly compared to his €100 million move to Juve 3 years ago. So it's nothing like that. And you know, suggestions are as well that he's come here on less money as well. Which, I mean, you're talking of a roughly speaking over the 2 years. There's obviously the option for the third. The initial 2 years, you're probably looking somewhere between 60 and 70 million that you're committing on Ronaldo. And in modern football, that's not an awful lot of money. That's an awful thing to say, but it's true. When you see some of the other deals going through this summer, you know, what will Chelsea have committed to bringing Lukaku in, for example? You know, 60 million over 2 years isn't a huge amount. And I think United look at what Ronaldo can bring to the dressing room, that sort of elite mentality, and also just bouncing off some of the younger players that he will inevitably play around. And to me, it seems like a fairly low risk deal. You know, if he suddenly broke his leg next week and barely played for United, it wouldn't be a huge risk, because you will have that commercial income. A lot of that will be covered. it feels fairly safe. So if you can bring him in and make that next step that United have struggled to do, losing countless semi-finals, losing the Europa League final as well. If he can get them over the line with a few of these achievements, bring a bit of silverware back, then it fully justifies itself.